When I was a kid, I read the comic books. And then, of course, you see the TV show. And you have a kind of an image of this Penguin character already. But just get that right out of your mind, because this is so totally unique and different.
If you go back and look at what Burgess Meredith did on the TV show, and I thought that was an incredibly great performance of bringing that character to life, Danny DeVito had the attitude. Danny DeVito had that dark humor that I think is really indicative of the Penguin, and the way that Tim really converted him into a fully grotesque supervillain that bared little resemblance to Danny DeVito himself.
He's such a great spirit, too, on the set, because, you know, because he's an actor, director, and producer and all.
I'd look at him, I was kind of envious sometimes, because I knew you could really get locked away and just go for it.
I'd always said that there was never going to be a Penguin in the cards for me. I mean, as this story was generating over a couple of years. But this was nothing like the Penguin that I had imagined. And once I hooked into, what Tim had in mind, I was pumped.
And we will snatch them, carry them into the sewer, and toss them into a deep, dark, watery grave.
Penguin, that was a character that evolved in interesting ways, too. I think when I came up with something in the script that he takes shredded documents that have been shredded and goes painstakingly glues them together, for that suddenly unleashed a lot in Tim of, the guy underground and he's taking all our crap, but he's doing something with it, and he knows all our secrets.
Tragic irony or poetic justice? You tell me.
My God, it's true. And the sewer.
He comes from a place that is unknown to any of us. After being thrust into a situation that he was as a baby and coming through it, and not only coming through it, but educating himself and turning the tables, becoming the leader.
There's an empathy to the character. There's a softness to the character. There's a need for that character to be wanted.
What is it that he missed in life? You look in Gotham City and you see kids playing, families enjoying the holiday season, the things that Oswald's never been exposed to, things that were never available to him. Down deep inside, there's still that humanity. Even though those are the people that kicked him out, threw him out, they are, after all, his parents. Never forgetting that in a second, if they were there at that moment, he could slaughter them, even though he feels they are his parents and he's moved by it.
You know, in a weird way, you have two characters from very similar backgrounds. You know, they're both born to privilege, fighting for the soul of the city. You have Batman disguised as a villain to fight, the criminal element. Yet you have Cobblepot, the much more villainous looking of the two, who's cloaked himself in respectability to charm the city and become its mayor and run the city that way. One was scarred by what happened to his parents. The other one is scarred by his parents who reject him and kind of cast him aside to become this freak.
When the giant penguins walk in and pick up the penguin at the end as pallbearers, I remember holding my breath when those penguins walked out, thinking, no, they're not really gonna. And then they picked him up somehow and carry him into the pool, and I just thought, it's just too perfect.
I loved it. I had a great time playing it.
Batman has a problem. He's only attracted to bad girls, and the Catwoman is the perfect foil for him in that regard.
She has a great relationship with Bruce Wayne and Batman, and you can't do that with any other villain. She's the opposite image of Batman.
I wanted to create a female villain because most of the villains prior to that time were males. So I created Catwoman in the image of a woman for a female audience. So that way we would grab the male audience and the female audience.
Well, the key thing I always remember about her is that when she first showed up, she didn't have the costume. She didn't have any costume. She was this beautiful brunette dressed up in like a green dress or something, but nothing flamboyant or super heroine or villainous. It would be another appearance or two before she would have like the cat mask, which would be more like an actual cat head on top of her, before she would finally have the stylized look that we would come to recognize as sort of the purple and green caped version that would last for a good I would say, 40 years of the character's comic history.
With Catwoman, the filmmakers really had to reinvent the character. You wanted to have somebody who was caught between the two worlds of Batman and the Penguin and Oswald and Bruce. So what better way to show that than a character who is somewhat in conflict with herself, who goes from being a very mousy, put-upon woman who comes back to avenge the crime that was done to her.
Selena. That's my name, Maximilians. Don't wear it out or I'll make you buy me a new one.
The DC version of Catwoman and the TV version of Catwoman, she was much tougher, openly, aggressive female from the get-go. And, all she did was throw on a costume. And to me, that wasn't interesting. And just, saying, okay, this is the way it was there, now I'm going to do it that way, too. It was completely uninteresting to me. And I was willing to, quote-unquote, lose the job. That was my take, to really start her off as, kind of a lowly secretary. I love in the fact that in the film that Michelle Pfeiffer doesn't even have a close-up until 20 minutes in the movie, that she's kind of in the background of scenes and you don't really see her. That I wanted that it was this this woman that starts off alone and becomes about empowerment, and it goes beyond feminism into something creepy and feminine, like something scary and dark. So I really felt like I was giving this a twist in a good way.
Hey, stud. I thought we had something together.
Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman is awesome. She was kind of slinky and kind of vampy and in a kind of campy, kind of Julie Newmar way, but still she had a real underlying psychotic edge to her. You knew at any moment she could really, really go off and do somebody some real harm.
It's one of my favorite performances of anything I've been around,
For the most part, I really approached it from the standpoint of the psychology of the character and this dual personality and what that meant, and everything really springing from that. Sometimes her sexuality will come out of a manipulation, sometimes it will come out of a playfulness, and sometimes it'll be very real. And we didn't exactly know where those moments were going to be. And then after a while, it just kind of took on a life of its own. And it became obvious where it had to be.
Catwoman is best described as an anti-hero because she's not a villainess in the most diabolical of senses. She's not a murderess. She's not about gaining vengeance for any particular thing. She's basically about kind of the anarchy of stealing from the man in a way.
That's the thing that's always been intriguing about this part. People come up to me now and they say, now, is she a good guy or is she a bad guy? And they're confused because it was always left very ambiguous. And I always liked that. I always liked that they just let it be that.
He's an industrialist. He, among other things, has Shreck's department store.
Originally, the Max Shreck character, he is the golden boy son of the Cobblepots, and it turns out that he and Penguin are brothers, and there was that kind of dichotomy in the movie of the saintly brother who runs the city and the ultimate black sheep who's thrown in the sewer, and how they come up together. But the script and the movie is way too rich to begin with, and that was just another layer that we finally had to lose.
When I suggested to Tim, I thought of Christopher Walken. And Tim, who loves ghouls and skeletons and odd things, said, "Oh, no," he said, I'm afraid of him. He scares me. And I said, "But Tim, you're supposed to be afraid of Max Shreck."
They made up a fictional character that's not in Batman's universe, and suddenly he becomes the most exciting character in the film. Well, sorry, but that's what you get when you put Christopher Walken in a role.
He says there's no such thing as too much power. He says that's what his life is about. Now, those are actually his lines. I think he means it. Max probably didn't have a lot of education, and that he sort of made his own way, Probably because when you're like that, there aren't that many people you can talk to.